What's up guys, it's Avery here. Today I want to talk to you about one of the biggest hurdles that newbie real estate investors have to get started. And no, I'm not talking about creating a system for how many toilets you're going to have to fix. I'm talking about running numbers, understanding rents and expenses to figure out which deal is actually a good one for you. Before we get into it, I just want to play a clip from a recent BiggerPockets podcast that I listened to, where the co-host, David Greene, who sold 200,000 copies of his 2 books, said something that was absolutely shocking, and I really just can't believe it. So let's play that clip.
Think of it when they call in to complain about something. What they see is, I'm paying $900 a month. He can afford $50 for this part. They don't realize out of that 900, only 100 of it was cash flow. You just spent 250 on that part. You just lost 3 months of cash flow from that one unit because of that one call. So
yeah, and that's the part that might bother somebody who's new. Like, let's see.
Is this man's really serious? I don't know. I just don't get it. If you guys are as confused as I was about that, please smash that like button, help me out so more people can see this video so they don't make those same mistakes. In case you guys missed it, David had said that the $900 a month that the guest was getting in rent and the $800 of expenses would leave $100 in cash flow. And they were talking about if a plumber were to come by and fix something and you pay that plumber $300, that you would lose 3 months of cash flow. And that is just wrong. Cash flow is not just the amount of rent you're getting minus your mortgage equals the cash flow. Your cash flow is your rental income minus your mortgage and your expenses, which includes paying that plumber $300 to come out and fix that thing, and whatever is left over, that is your cash flow. You need to take into account all of these expenses that come up. And I can't believe it, for someone who is the host of one of the most listened to podcasts on real estate investing out there to have said that, it goes against everything that I know about running the numbers on a property. So the reason I'm making this video is so I can expose people like David Greene and all of those real estate investors who are out there on those podcasts saying they have all of this cash flow when in fact they're going around and paying someone else to fix something, which is just real estate investing and landlording 101. As well, I would like to help people out, more importantly, figure out how to run those numbers on your real estate investment properties and what is actually a good deal so you can actually get a good understanding of becoming a landlord and how to run numbers properly for your investment property. Running the numbers seems to be one of the biggest things that people have trouble with when starting out. It's really not that difficult, and you don't need to be a math major, even though I was, to figure this stuff out. Weird flex, but okay. Often I'll talk to people and they'll have gone through the numbers and only looked at the rent that they're getting and the mortgage that they have. And when I say mortgage, I'm talking about the principal, the interest, the taxes, and your homeowner's insurance policy that you have with that specific property. So they specifically just look at rent minus mortgage and assume that the rest is cash flow. There's so much more to it. There's so many more things that I'm going to get into and help you understand. Before we get into understanding expenses, we really need to understand the rents. If you don't understand the rents, even how they differ from neighborhood to neighborhood within a town, you're not going to have a very successful time underwriting your properties and figuring out what is a good deal for you. There are a number of ways that you can get more familiar with what the rents are in a certain area. The easiest way for me to get a good understanding of what the rents are was to work with a real estate agent who was familiar with the area. My real estate agent was awesome, can't say enough good things about him, and when we would go look at properties, he would bring a list of similar, comparable rental units, pictures of those rental units, and how much that each of those things are renting for. So my real estate agent was awesome because he basically did a lot of this legwork for me. Now, I had to go back and understand and look at and internalize the numbers that he was giving me so that when I was bringing him properties that I wanted to go see, it was actually worth both of our time. Another good way to understand what the rents are in a certain area is to go on various platforms like apartments.com, Zillow, or HotPads, where you would be looking for an apartment yourself. And now you can't just go look at what apartments are listed for. If you go online and see that a 3-bedroom is listed for $3,000 and you think, okay, bam, perfect, that is the exact thing that I'm going to use, that is totally wrong. When you're going on these websites, make sure you look at like buildings. So if you're wanting to buy a 2 to 4 unit multifamily, look at the rents for the 2 to 4 unit multifamily buildings. And don't just pick any single 2 to 4 unit multifamily building that has the rents that you think that you're going to get for your specific investment property. What you need to do is check these websites every day. If something is listed as $2,500 for that 3-bedroom and you look every single day and it's 3 weeks later and it's still listed at $2,500, whereas you've noticed a bunch of $2,200, $2,300 3 beds going off the market quite quickly, you'll know that the building priced at $2,500 a month is too expensive. You're gonna wanna underwrite your numbers at $2,200 or $2,300 for a 3-bedroom in this area. And it's always better to be more conservative. Don't think you're gonna get more rent than you will. If you get more rent, that is just a cherry on top. But underwrite your numbers at the lowest possible outcome, and if anything happens better, that is perfect, then it's an even better deal than you thought before. The last thing that you can do is go talk to other investors in the area. Other investors are gonna have a really good understanding of the rents in a specific town. They're gonna have gone through the process and know what the rents could be for a studio, 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed, etc. They're gonna know that Section 8 may pay more for a specific bedroom type than if you were listing it as a market tenant. There are lots of different nuances that experienced investor are gonna have compared to someone who is just starting out and getting to know an area. So after we've gotten to know the rents of an area, the expenses are the most important thing. The first expense that we can talk about other than your mortgage would be maintenance and repairs. Now, like I said at the beginning, this is your system of figuring out how many times you're gonna have to fix that toilet late at night, because that's what all real estate investors and landlords do all the time. Kidding aside, those are the kind of expenses that you'll get calls for a bit more frequently, or little things like small repairs that your handyman can go out and do. If there's a minor leak in the sink, or the toilet stopped working, or the heat has gone out for the day, these are those maintenance and repair costs that you would think about that are small fixes that someone can maybe take a couple of hours to go out and fix. So the next thing we're going to look at in terms of expenses would be capital expenditures, or what is known as CapEx. So CapEx are going to be those major things that you're going to have to replace over time. Every single month you have to put away a little bit of money for these big repairs. So no, this is not the same as your toilet or your heat going out or a leak. This would be putting away money each month for the roof that you're going to have to replace, for the heating systems that you're going to have to replace eventually, for the hot water tanks going out, for new windows, whatever these larger expenses may be over time, that if you're holding onto the property long enough, you're gonna have to account for. The next expense that we wanna look at would be utilities. So typically in my area, a lot of the utilities are split out. So for example, in my 3-family, there are 3 gas meters, 3 electric meters, and 3 separate heating systems. So each tenant is billed separately for their own heating costs and electricity and hot water. That is not on me as the landlord. One of the biggest expenses that landlords have that crush a bunch of cash flow would be unit turnover or vacancy. So every single month you need to put money away just in case it takes you an extra month to turn over that unit. Another expense column that I would have would be other expenses. So yes, this is very vague, but it's always good to pad your expenses. If you end up having less expenses and make more cash flow, that's awesome. But if you've underwritten your building so that you've taken into account these random miscellaneous expenses that come up, you're gonna be in a good setting and you're gonna have a good, healthy cash flow for your building. One other expense that's good to think about would be property management. Now this can be one of the larger expenses that people take on, and even if you're self-managing, people say to make sure that you're keeping some money set aside for property management. And yes, I agree with this. But if you're self-managing, obviously you don't have those costs, but eventually down the road, you may want to get a property manager when you've scaled your business and it's a lot of time for you to self-manage. In an expensive market, however, it can be a little bit difficult to put that property management fee in, especially if you're self-managing and if you're trying to be competitive. The more expenses that you have and that you show on your sheet of cash flow analysis, the lower you're gonna want to purchase that building for so that it makes sense for you. All right, so now that I've talked about what those rents are and what the expenses are that you need to take into account, please smash that like button. And once you smash that like button, let's move forward and look at a specific building on realtor.com. I just like the site because of the layout and what those numbers may be, and running actual numbers for a small multi-unit investment property in the Boston area. So I'm just gonna look at Malden, Mass, which is a suburb of the Boston area. This is a town that people are investing in heavily right now in the Boston area, and many people are attempting to house hack. And if you're not familiar with house hacking, check it out up here or the description below and figure out how you can get into your first investment property for a low down payment. So when looking at Malden, you can see it is just north of the city. and Boston prices are fairly expensive. As we're zooming in here, you can tell that. So I'm just gonna go around and let's look at this 584K. Actually, you know what? Let's go 674K, see how this one looks. And yes, it is contingent, but that doesn't totally matter. We can just go and look at the numbers. This is for educational purposes only. So I've clicked into this and it looks like it is a 6-bed, 3-bath, multifamily home. Looks like we have a 2-family building here in Malden, and it is a 4-bed, 2-bath, as well as a 2-bed, 1-bath. So just looking at these photos, looks like a pretty nice building. The roof looks like it's in pretty good shape. Nice siding, decent windows, all that good stuff. Looks like it has some parking. So it looks like a pretty decent building. And the reason I'm going through these pictures is because I want to get a good understanding of what the rents are going to be. Obviously, if it has luxury finishes, it's going to go for higher in rent. And if it's a total gut job, probably no one's going to want to rent from that apartment anyway. So that's probably enough for me of looking through the photos. It looks like it could be a good place in terms of some value add and understanding what the rents are. And it's probably going to be pretty in line with the area based on the condition of the home and how the interior looks. Just going into the monthly payment, and here we're gonna look at this from the perspective of someone who wants to house hack. And again, quickly, if you haven't seen that video, description below, but that is putting 3.5% down, living in the property for a year, so you're utilizing one of the units, and then moving out so that it could become a full investment property. If you want to have a full investment property, you got to put at least 25% down, which is obviously a lot more, especially in these expensive markets. So Realtor.com typically puts us at 20%, so I'll change that to 3.5%. Obviously our mortgage goes up quite a bit, not only because you have a higher loan, but also this thing right here called mortgage insurance, which is included in your loan if you have less than 20% down on a property. This home insurance cost, which again, I think is something that you get to understand as you get to know the building. So talking to that real estate agent, insurance agent, or that other investor will help you with this expense. I would say that that's a little bit high. 150 is usually what they put in underwriting for the bank. So this property tax seems a little bit high, but let's keep it there just in case so we can pad our expenses and feel better about this building. So we have a total of $3,980 a month. Now we can head over to that spreadsheet and we can type in that purchase price here of $674,900, and we can look at closing costs. So in my area, closing costs will typically be around $10,000 or $11,000. And you're able to actually wrap that into the loan with your offer. So in this scenario, if we offered $685,000 with a $10,000 closing credit, a lot of those closing costs will be paid by the loan that your tenants will then pay down later. So we've added $10,000 in for those closing costs. Next, we're gonna be looking at this from the perspective of a house hack. So that would be 3.5% down, and we're gonna be living in this place for at least a year. And we have the total loan amount plus our interest rate of 2.95. Again, if that's better than that, that's awesome, but we'll underwrite that as it is now. And we have our 4-bed rent from unit 1 that we're projecting at $2,900. And we have our rent from unit 2 that'll be around $1,800 or $1,900, but you're living in it, and we're assuming that you watch all of my renovation videos and that you're gonna fix the place up so that you're gonna get that $1,900 amount. So now in total, we have $2,900, $1,900, which is $4,800 in income. And again, we're projecting that we're gonna be living in this unit, and we would most likely occupy the 2 unit. So we won't be getting this $1,900 until we move out after year 1. So if we're living here in year 1, we're probably gonna have a roommate, and our girlfriend's gonna live with us because we're smart and we've watched Avery's videos and we know to make sure that we maximize our asset. So we're gonna be getting $850 from that roommate and $1,250 from our significant other. So we're gonna be down to $4,150. Plus now we've looked at these repairs and maintenance, vacancy, the water bill, which I usually put at about $60 per month per unit. And that's something I just know from experience. And that is the type of questions you're gonna wanna ask that investor who has good knowledge of the area. And our other expense, putting it at 1% of the total income that we're getting. And insurance, we had said around $150, so we'll make that a bit higher. Our monthly property taxes were listed at $539 on the site. Again, that may differ. You just want to look at the actual property taxes to get the correct numbers for this. And our PMI, which is extremely large, is going to be $559. Again, while we're living here and looking at the mortgage, we have roughly $3,900 in a mortgage expense. and we're getting $41.50 because we're being smart. We have that roommate, we have that significant other who's helping us out with the rent, so that we're actually positive in terms of the mortgage and when we're living there. So that's awesome. We don't have all this money saved for expenses, but while you're living there, if you can get money over the mortgage, that is a huge win, especially in an expensive market. So now if we go back to the top and we change that $1,250 to what we're expecting to get, that $1,900, we will be cash flowing around $21 per month when taking into account repairs, vacancy, water bill, other insurance, as well as the property taxes, PMI, mortgage, and capital expenditures that we're saving for. So this is basically a $0, you're breaking even property, which in an expensive market isn't actually terrible. Prices and rents really climb in these expensive markets, especially in these paths of progression. Once you refinance and get rid of that PMI, your cash flow will be a whole lot higher, and this will look a lot better in terms of an investment. So all in all, this deal isn't a total slam dunk. It hasn't been as great of numbers in terms of some of the buildings that I've bought. Weird brag, I know. But if you're looking to get started where these markets are rising and rising, this actually wouldn't be too bad of a property in my opinion, especially if you're gonna house hack it for a few years. If you look at it from a pure investment standpoint, and if you were putting 25% down, obviously that cash flow is higher, but you've put a lot more money down and your money isn't working as hard. Whereas if you put less money down, your money is going to be working really hard for you. So as you can see, the difficult part really isn't the math. And yes, maybe it looks like I have a pretty fancy spreadsheet, but it really isn't. I'm just adding what the mortgage could be and the expenses that I have and doing plus, minus. Pretty simple math. It's really understanding what the rents are and what expenses you need to take into account, because there are so many that people don't think about. Please do not be like David Greene, who is apparently an experienced investor and telling people that when you pay a plumber to fix something, that's eating into your cash flow. If you want to own a property that actually earns you money, rather than being able to tell people on podcasts that it earns you money, then you need to understand how to run numbers. It's very simple math, quick maths, and it is not something that you should be spending so much time on. You can see that we only spent a few minutes just looking at this property, and I now know that it would be a good one to go look at for further investigation. So if this video helped you guys out and got you to understand how to actually look at the numbers for a rental property, please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what area you're looking in for an investment and how this video may have helped you. Please share with others so they don't make these same mistakes when buying an investment property. So many people get turned off by real estate because they do a bad deal, and it's because they just don't understand what they're getting into and how much things actually cost. If you guys want to hear more about some of my rental properties and some of the things that I've gone through and some of those renovations that I've done, check them out in the description below or on my channel. I would really appreciate you guys commenting and liking all the videos, subscribing to the channel. Help me out for that YouTube algorithm, especially if we want more people to see a video like this. And thanks again for watching.